Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a concept that is an absolute game changer in programming, the repetition structure. You probably know it as a loop. Honestly, if you've ever felt like coding can be a tedious copy and paste nightmare, Chapter 7 is where that all changes. We're going to set the stage for how you can automate all those boring, repetitive tasks with just a few clever lines of C++ code. Okay, let's dive right in.
Think about this for a quick second. How do you actually tell a computer to do a task 1,000 times? Do you just write out the exact same line of code 1,000 times? No way. Absolutely not. That would be completely inefficient and, frankly, incredibly frustrating. In the real world, developers need a way to process massive amounts of data dynamically. We need an ultimate time-saving solution, and that is precisely where loops step in to do the heavy lifting for us.
So grounding ourselves in the basics first, what actually is a loop? By definition, a repetition structure, or loop, is a control structure that directs the computer to repeat one or more instructions until a specific condition is met. Think of it like setting a rule. You're giving the computer a condition, and you're saying, hey, keep running these instructions over and over again as long as this condition holds true. And the exact moment it's not true, you stop looping. It's a super simple idea, but it is deeply powerful.
All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. Number 1, welcome to the loop. Number 2, pretest versus post-test logic. 3, loop control and sentinels. 4, C++ syntax for while and for loops. And finally, number 5, counters and accumulators.
Section 1. Welcome to the loop, automating tasks. Before we even look at any code, let's step back and imagine a practical real-world scenario to see why we desperately need loops. Meet Robin the robot. Robin is programmed to sign a copy of her best-selling book for a customer. Without a loop, Robin operates totally sequentially. Step 1, accept the book. Step 2, place it on the table. Open it, sign it, close it, return it, and, finally, thank the customer. That's 7 distinct instructions for one person. Now what happens if there are 100 customers in line? Without a loop, a programmer would literally have to write out those 7 steps 100 times. That is 700 lines of instruction just to process a simple book signing. Yikes.
Now contrast that exhausting manual process with this updated approach. Here, we've wrapped those exact same 7 instructions inside a loop body. We just give Robin a single rule: repeat while there are customers in line. As long as that is true, Robin processes the loop body. The beauty here is that these few lines of instruction dynamically handle 1 customer, 100 customers, or 10,000 customers. We don't have to change the code at all based on the size of the crowd. Boom! That is the raw power of the repetition structure.
Moving right along to Section 2, pretest versus post-test logic.
So, the big question here is, when does your computer actually check the rules? We have 2 options, pretest and post-test. Pretest loops are top-driven. That means the computer evaluates the condition before it even touches the instructions in the loop body. If that condition is false from the very start, those instructions might never, ever run. Post-test loops, on the other hand, are bottom-driven. They evaluate the condition after the instructions are processed. This means the instructions in a post-test loop are guaranteed to be processed at least once, no matter what. In this explainer, we're going to focus heavily on the pretest loop, because it's the one you'll use the most.
Section 3. Loop control and sentinels. Basically, how to stop looping.
Enter the antagonist of our coding story, the infinite loop, also known as the endless loop. If you write a loop where the condition always evaluates to true, the computer will literally just keep processing those instructions forever. It will freeze up your application and completely eat up your processing power. If you ever find your program running away from you, here's a quick pro tip: press Ctrl+C on your keyboard. That will usually force stop a runaway program. But, ideally we want to prevent this from happening in the first place. To avoid that infinite loop nightmare, we follow an essential 3-step method when getting data from a user. Step 1 is the priming read. This is an instruction right before the loop that sets things up by getting the very first input value. Step 2 is evaluating the loop condition by comparing that input to a sentinel value. A sentinel value is basically a special tripwire, like entering -1 when the program normally expects a positive sales amount, that tells the loop, okay, it's time to end. And finally, step 3, the absolute most critical part, the update read. This goes inside the loop body, and it gets the next input from the user. Without the update read, your variable never changes, the condition never becomes false, and you are trapped in an infinite loop. Take a look at how this logic actually plays out visually in a flowchart. See the decision diamond? That represents our condition. It has 1 flow line entering and 2 leaving, marked true and false.
If the condition is true, we follow the path. To calculate the bonus, display it, and then, crucially, we hit that update read, enter the sales. Notice how the flow line then circles right back up to the decision diamond to reevaluate. It is this literal circle, or loop, formed by the true path that visually makes this a repetition structure rather than just a one-off choice.
Section 4. C++ syntax. While and for. Let's actually write some loop code. All right, here we have the syntax for the classic C++ while statement, which is your go-to for a pre-test loop. You start with the keyword while, followed by your condition enclosed in parentheses. If it evaluates to true, the loop processes the statement block inside those curly braces. And hey, even if you only have one statement, it's a great habit to use those braces anyway, just for clarity. Oh, and notice that little comment at the bottom? /end while. Highly recommend making that a habit. It clearly marks the end of your loop and keeps your code super readable.
But what if you actually know exactly how many times a loop needs to run? Well, that's where the for statement comes in. The for loop is a much more compact alternative, and it is perfectly suited for counter-controlled scenarios. It handles the initialization, the condition checking, and the updating all in one single organized place right at the top of the loop.
Let's put them side by side to see how this works. Notice the parentheses in the for loop structure. Inside, it packs 3 distinct arguments separated by semicolons: the initialization, the condition, and the update argument. It's clean, it's concise, and it keeps all your loop control mechanics on one single line. Whereas a while loop might have its update read buried all the way at the very end of its loop body, the for loop puts it front and center.
And finally, Section 5, counters and accumulators. Tracking massive data.
So inside your loop body, you're usually trying to calculate something, right? Subtotals, totals, averages. To do this, you need numeric variables. A counter is used exactly as it sounds, for counting things, like the total number of employees you've processed. It's updated by a constant value, usually just incremented by 1. An accumulator, on the other hand, is for keeping running totals, like the total dollar amount of all sales. It's updated by a variable amount, because every sale is a different size. Just remember, both of these have to be initialized to a starting value, usually 0, before the loop even starts.
Now, how do we know our math is actually working while the loop runs? Programmers use a technique called desk checking. Basically, you just manually track how the variable values change, iteration by iteration, in a simple little table. Notice how iteration 1 brings in 10,000 in sales, giving us a 500 bonus. Iteration 2 updates the sales to 25,000, yielding a 1250 bonus, and then iteration 3 brings in a -1. That's our sentinel value. The loop condition evaluates to false, and the program safely ends.
And here is what a real desk check actually looks like on paper. Notice how the previous values for sales and bonus are literally crossed out, and the updated new values are written right below them. It might seem a little old school, but this step-by-step verification proves exactly how updating variables yields accurate totals. Honestly, desk checking is an absolute lifesaver when you're trying to untangle weird logic errors in a complex loop.
Well, there you have it. We've broken down pre-test and post-test logic, we've navigated the dangers of the infinite loop using sentinels, and we've checked out the C++ syntax that brings it all to life. The immense power of the repetition structure is literally right at your fingertips now. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Look at the stuff you handle every single day. What tedious, repetitive task in your own life would you automate right now with a simple 3-line C++ loop? Think about it. Thanks for hanging out with me in this explainer. Now go write some code.